Hello everybody, Kelly Rice here, but I write under my pen name, K.M. Rice. Welcome to my author vlog. I'm starting this episode, as I did last time, just sharing my excitement that Afterworld Book 1 Ophelia is coming out very soon, May 18th. It is the first book in my Afterworld series, as the title would suggest, and I've been working on this for years and years. There are 4 books in the series, and I'm very excited and more than a little anxious to put it out there. So check it out, you guys. And if you want to be able to read the prologue before you can even access the book itself, then feel free to hop onto my Patreon. The link's in the description, and that is April's reward for the $10 tier Scribblings. So it's your opportunity. And also, in turn, you are supporting an independent creative, myself, who is doing things like making these vlogs and telling stories that are unconventional because they do not have to pass through the wary eyes of gatekeepers in the publishing industry. So bear that in mind. That's why sometimes you'll find indie stuff is a bit avant-garde and exciting. So today's question was sent in by a viewer named, I know I've answered a question from this person before and I was equally as afraid. Dorothea Eli? Am I getting that anywhere remotely correct? Feel free to write back in the comments and tell me, like, you butchered my name or you didn't. But this person writes, very good advice. I write realistic stories about a woman's life. I'm afraid for the Mary Sues. Could you say more about that subject sometime, please? Oh, the Mary Sues. Mary Sues are something that I was only made aware of through my reading of fan fiction, and that's how I was exposed to many things, actually, in life. I found out what slash is by stumbling into a story and reading along, and all of a sudden Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were not just Master and Padawan, and I was very confused, and then remembered seeing the word slash in the description and was like, what does that mean? The innocence of youth. But Mary Sue is a term that, yes, I encountered first in fan fiction and realized it has since kind of expanded to all of fiction. Oh, yeah, I want to point out, I finally have another semi-nice top. I don't know, it might be dry by now. I put it on to film this and then I went and started doing laundry and I got it wet, but isn't that cute? Maybe I should start a whole section of Patreon where people donate money just to help me buy nice tops for my vlog. But that was a joke, by the way. So I thought I would start by reading the Wikipedia description of what a Mary Sue is. Let's see here. Wow, I don't know how it scrolled to the bottom of the page without me touching it. Wow, I am somewhere else. Okay, here we go. I don't know who that was who was just speaking, but maybe it was me. Maybe that was the real me. Maybe it was Linda after she had a sex change. Or maybe that's just Linda's real voice. Maybe we'll get to see Linda again. I sure hope so. Anyhow. A Mary Sue is an idealized and seemingly perfect fictional character. Often this character is recognized as an author insert or wish fulfillment. They can usually perform better tasks than should be possible given the amount of training or experience. In some contexts, the name is reserved only for women, but more often the name is used for both genders. A male can also be referred to as a Marty Stew or Gary Stew, but Mary Sue is used more commonly. My understanding was that the name originated, like, at least this is what I inferred, I actually don't know, but that Mary Sue was kind of like Mary Jane, and it was like, oh, the girl next door, but the girl next door just happens to be, you know, amazing in all these different ways. Now, I should start off by saying this is certainly not relegated only to fiction. This is something that you see all the time in films, in particular with women. Like, look at Pirates of the Caribbean. Yes, good on them for including Elizabeth Swann. Ooh, though, Elizabeth Swann is not only the high society girl who's absolutely gorgeous and is the prize for every man and is trying to be married off, as if that's not enough, she's also somehow incredibly good with a sword and a master of every action scene that she's in the trilogies, even with very little to no explanation of how she would even... Like, have you ever picked up a sword? Don't you guys go to, like, Highland Games and Renaissance fairs and stuff, and have you ever had the opportunity to touch even a replica sword? They're freaking heavy, dude. And, like, there's these actresses and they've got these little, like, stick arms and, you know, I'm okay, I've got some muscle, but... And it's just like... And it's like, how would they be able to do that? Come on. I mean... There are probably plenty of women who have long, lean muscles. Like, I'm a taller, more slender person, so even if I work out a lot, this is probably pretty much as big as it's gonna get. If you're shorter and have shorter muscles, they're gonna be more defined. It's just how bodies work. But, so I'm not trying to say, like, judging people based on their muscle mass. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean when there's a character who's like, wow, she's a genius, and she's gorgeous, and she's an action star, and she knows what to say every second, and it's just, you can't relate to that person at all, because, like the description said, they're perfect. So, you are worried that you are going to start writing a character like this. I think it's hard because there is a place for Mary Sue's. I think that in true escapism, you kind of have some sort of soothing comfort by being in a world where a character like that can exist and you can be like, gee, I wish... I mean, a lot of us would probably wish that we could grab a bow and arrow or a sword and know immediately what to do with it. Or, you know, be such a genius that we know how to defuse that bomb. So, yes, there is wish fulfillment going on there. But I think that sometimes there's wish fulfillment for the reader or the audience member also kind of wanting to put on that person's clothing for a while and walk in that world. But, like I said, the big risk is that you isolate yourself and your readers from anything real, because reality is gritty and imperfect and full of flaws. There's perfection in there too, and of course great beauty. But, you know what I mean. So, you're worried that you are going to be writing these characters. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that this question was sent in by a female. That might be a big error on my part, but just because Dorothea seemed to be part of this person's name. But I'm going to definitely speak to you as a woman writing about women, by and large. My first book that I ever wrote, I think, had probably had a Mary Sue-ish quality, because I specifically drew from my childhood experiences to inform the characters, and I gave her physical characteristics that were similar to mine. She had long brown hair, and she had freckles that she was embarrassed by. And she's a young character. She's like 13 in the first book. So there was some Mary Sueism going on there, and there was some wish fulfillment going on there, because she's also an incredibly brave and scrappy character. And she's put in situations where I wouldn't know what to do, but of course she gets to know what to do. So I always kind of looked at her, her name's Isabel, I always kind of looked at her as a braver version of me. You know, what I wish I could do or could have done at that age. Ironically enough, it's not ironic until I get to the later part of this story. When I then wrote Darkling, I was like, I want to have the heroine be very different from me. So what did I do? And this is very juvenile. I made her short. I made her very curvy and buxom-y. That's not a word, but buxom. And blonde. And yes, of short stature. And I thought, there, I've done it. Any similarities to me are gone. Personality-wise, she's a very kind and open person. I don't know if I can necessarily hold up a mirror and reflect those traits back onto myself. But my attempts to make her very different than me, I don't know, they ended there, because what I realized that I was doing, and this may get more to the heart of your question, is I was filling, and I realized this by the time that I wrote Ophelia Afterworld Book 1. As I was crafting that character, I realized the juvenile mistakes I'd made with the first book. She was kind of like me. Second book made her look different than me. Now I'm writing about a character who looks very different than me, but I also wanted to have character traits that were different than me. And I realized that what I had done in the past and everything else I'd written was I wrote about characters who I liked. I shared a lot of their interests. I shared a lot of their values. I shared a lot of their different outlooks. Of course, I might simplify it and kind of assign a love of nature to one character and a love of a nurturing side to another character. I might separate out these different parts of humanity that I really gravitate towards into individuals rather than having them be all into one complex person. Because let's face it, if you're really going to write like about a person, you need like 500 tomes this thick. But the point is that I was writing about things that were comfortable and pleasing to me. And I think that that's probably getting at the heart of the Mary Sue question. Are you writing about what is pleasing to you? That's fine. That's great. But you may come to a point in your writing career where you want to challenge yourself more and expand more. And that was me when I came to Ophelia. I was writing about a heroine who had to be similar to me because I wanted to set the story in the city that I was raised near, Santa Cruz, California, because I realized a lot of people read to escape to different geographical places, and Santa Cruz is a very quirky, wonderful, hippie-filled beach town with a massive surfing culture. And who doesn't want to, it's a big tourist hotspot, who doesn't want to come check that out? And if you can't come here physically, you can come through books like mine and experience the mini Portland atmosphere that is Santa Cruz, California. Keeps Santa Cruz weird. I love Santa Cruz. I love its quirkiness. There, of course, are sides of Santa Cruz that I do not like, but I wanted to set this particular story in my city. So I'm doing the classic write what you know thing. And I can write about what I know because I'm setting it in a location familiar to me, and I'm giving some of her locations and what she's doing in her life. They were things that I was also familiar with. That said, having realized what I did with Isabel and what I did with Willow, I wanted to make her different than me in terms of personality. So I thought about other people I knew who she could potentially mimic, and I wrote about them. So I gave her qualities that might surprise you when you hear me say this, but I gave her the quality of being an introvert and a bookworm, and someone who kind of likes to stay indoors, and someone who loves to write essays and analyze. And you might look at me and think that that's me, but it's very much not me. And I went to school with those people, I admire those people. There's nothing negative about having that personality at all, but it's just different than me. But I understand I project that image because I'm a writer and a reader and all that. So I chose to write about something that I knew because a lot of those people are my friends, and like I said, I went to school with them and I can completely relate to them and understand them, but it is something fundamentally different from my being and who I am and what I feel defines me. I obviously circle into that world and can be a part of that world, but ultimately a lot of my goals and ambitions and aspirations have always been separate. I wrote essays because I had to. I did not enjoy writing papers. I read certain books because I had to. There were plenty of books I read in grad school, and so kill me now. You learn you have to pick your battles when you're crunched for time. There were some books that I didn't actually read. I would read the first chapter, skim through it, read the end, and then look up a summary online. yeah, maybe that makes me a bad student, but I just literally did not have time to be taking, because in the Master of Fine Arts program I was in, half of it is literature. So I was expected to be reading enough books to fill 2 courses and reading all of my other students' work and providing feedback. So, like I said, it got to the point where you kind of do have to pick your battles. And Ophelia would never do that. Ophelia would be aghast at me for admitting that on camera. So, I think it's part of the psychological process of writing, especially when we're writing about things that hit kind of close to home and are kind of similar to what we're used to dealing with in our daily lives and in the types of stories that we want to tell, is to make those conscious decisions of, are you going to make this person very different from you or not? Now, obviously, that isn't a dramatic difference, the difference between me and Ophelia. However, there are characters in Ophelia, and I will do my best to describe this without spoilers, who are dramatically different than me. There is one character in particular who, as I wrote about this person, I realized I was grossed out and wanted distance from, and it was almost as if I could smell them and they were stinky and I did not want to come near them or hug them. They were so full of fleas and flaws. They didn't literally have fleas, but you know what I mean. It was a character and a person who was so tumultuous in their own being and in how they lived their life that you feel like they're full of fleas and flaws, and you don't maybe want to come towards them right away. And as an author, I loved that. I loved that I was writing about this character who I'm like, eh. But the more I wrote about this person, the more I got to know this person, and the more I realized I was also writing about myself. So, everything comes full circle. Because ironically, if you were to ask me which character I identified with the most in the Afterward series, I would choose that character. And my sister told me the same thing. She stopped and thought about it for a second and said, it would not be Ophelia. It would be... fill in the blank. So, it's... psychologically it's weird because we are putting ourselves into every single character we write, including the villains. And that can cause a little bit of soul searching, that can be a little bit trippy. But I do think it's important that we challenge ourselves as writers, step out of our comfort zones. And like I said, in Ophelia, I pushed myself to write about a life experience that was so different than what I've known. Through that, especially because I was writing about something contemporary, I felt like I gained massive understanding and compassion for people like this character. And it's not that I wouldn't have had that anyway, but I never had a reason to stop and think about it before. And now I did through my writing. And that's what I love about writing, is there could be locations like in my short story and poetry collection, The Country Beyond the Forests. That is the literal translation of Transylvania. I randomly became enamored several years ago with the region of Transylvania and its history, and no surprises here if you know me, World War I, and I wrote a long short story set in Transylvania during World War I. I had so much fun researching the area, the location, what are the Southern Carpathian Mountains like, and I don't know if I would have, writing gives you an excuse to kind of delve into these things. And if you're watching this and you're watching it near the upload date, it's trippy because I filmed this 2 weeks before it's going to be uploaded. I'm actually currently in Ireland, but I filmed this in California. Traveling to get these details and to observe places for your writing and for your work, like I do every time I go somewhere, is so important. And again, it can be that little nudge that gets you out the front door if you're on the fence of, should I do this or should I not? So take those risks and go out into the world, little hobbits. Yeah, so I think that the real fear with Mary Sue's is some sort of lack of self-awareness. Now, I'll look at Eragon. again, like I was pointing about my own work, I think it has to do with maturity. The books Eragon are obviously highly derivative of Star Wars, of Lord of the Rings, of a lot of fantasy and science fiction that have come before them. But I really love Christopher Paolini's Inheritance series. I think they're great fun. But the first book in particular, he started writing and perhaps finished when he was 15 years old. And of course that shows, because he was a young kid drawing on a lot of archetypes and stereotypes that were very useful and handy to him, that he could just kind of plug into his story. That said, it's still incredibly impressive that someone could do that at 15 years old. However, it's easy to say that there's some sort of wish fulfillment going on through those stories, that perhaps that is a 15-year-old boy wanting to go on this adventure and have all these wonderful and terrifying things happen to him that happened to the Eragon character. But again, what's wrong with that? You know, especially if it's a young person. What's wrong with that? So I think when it crosses the line and becomes really transparent, and again, I come at this from the fanfiction world, when it's, you'll go into fanfiction.net and you would see story after story for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and it would be a high schooler gets transported to Middle Earth and meets so-and-so and goes on the quest with them. And those stories were super popular. I never read a single one. I remember there was one I skimmed probably like 15 years ago for Lord of the Rings, because I was just curious, like, why are people drawn to this? And it was just something I'm not into, but if that's what you're into, that's what you're into, who cares? But I can see why some people would find it cringeworthy, because you're like, that is so not canon. That is so against, you know, the theme and the feeling of the original work. But we have, like, what is it, a Yankee in Camelot's Court? We have a type of story that is all about time travel and all about, like, the fish out of water, the person being launched into another time and space, and often it's comedic. How are they going to get around? How are they going to get by? How are they going to understand this? And time travel seems to be something that humans are always fascinated with. I am myself. But it, again, if it's done well, we call it entertainment. If it's done clunkily, we kind of laugh at it. So, of course, that's something that you're going to want to be conscious of and not want to, you know, step forward with the wrong foot. But my advice to you, if you're worried about writing Mary Sue's, if you're worried about writing characters that are perfect, give them flaws. And give them character traits that you're uncomfortable with. Don't make them align perfectly with your values. I realized this too when I was kind of paying more attention to the media I was consuming. For example, Hell on Wheels. There's this wonderful TV show called Hell on Wheels. The main character in that, and this isn't a spoiler because you find it out right away, he's a murderer. He's killed people before. And he's killed them out of revenge and cold blood and all that. But you love the guy. You follow him through the whole series and you're rooting for him. He might do stuff that you're like, yeah, that wasn't good. But I still like you. I was just blown away by that, and I'm like, that is such good storytelling. How do you make me like someone who I dislike what they've done? Yet I feel so much empathy and care for this character and his story and his world. Yet I completely disagree with what he's done, or maybe what he's just said, or that value that he holds. So was kind of part of my awakening, I would say, as an author, and going on that journey of challenging myself and be like, can I do this? Can I also look at people who I don't like and try to tell stories that I do like about them and learn more about myself in the process? Though I'm never aware that I'm learning more about myself in the process until, like, someone else points it out to me or later, because I'm just not good at that kind of thing. But it's there and it's happening and it's part of the writing process. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps someone somewhere and provides maybe a little bit of clarity or insight. And again, I love doing this vlog because it's like we're having a conversation, and you might not be speaking back to me in real time, but I might be putting ideas out there into the universe that will bounce off of the ideas that are floating around in your mind, and spark something in you, and it is kind of then like a two-way conversation. But yes. So, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider popping onto my Patreon. The link is in the description. You can support this vlog for just $1 a month. And have a look. There's other goodies you can get, including this month's $10 tier reward is the prologue to Ophelia after World Book 1. So you'll get to read that before the book is released. And hopefully it will intrigue you. Alright guys, I'm going to sign off with this cute little matchbox from Baron Hook, which is a place in town where my books are for sale. It's my friend Julie's beautiful little boutique shop, where she has a lot of handmade items, upcycled items, things like Kay Rice books and Kelly's scarves, stuff like that. And on May 18th we were having our book launch party on a deck right next door, and the books and refreshments and all that will be at Baron Hook, so I'm very excited. Okay, so from me and my charming little matchbox, which by the way you can go to baronhook.com, and I believe she also has an Etsy if you want to check out her wonderful items. Her slogan is "Making the Everyday Extraordinary." She very aptly describes her aesthetic as Downton Abbey meets the Addams Family. So if that appeals to you, check out Julie's stuff. Alright guys, until next time.